දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
How does a country like Sri Lanka avoid getting trapped in this geoethnic fragmentation? And is there a risk that you have to start choosing sides? How do you avoid that?
As a small country, I think in my view, we are the worst affected through fragmentation. I can just start from both sides, externally and also internally. That's the two parts. Externally, one example I can cite is that sanctions on Iran by the US. We had the only refinery in Sri Lanka that could use Iranian crude oil. With the sanctions, we had to stop operations and the cost of energy went up as a small country. But we also understand the bigger, strong economies like even India and South Europe continue to trade with Iran and use petroleum. Whereas we worst affected all these small countries like us because we can't do trade settlements because of that. Even now, Russia and Ukraine war, if you look at who has been worst affected, obviously we know India, China, some of the European countries still import petroleum from Russia, whereas we can't. And as a result, we are paying higher price for petroleum. In our view, country like ours is basically affecting more in terms of fragmentation than the bigger, stronger economies. It's not only that, in terms of internal policies. If you look at Sri Lanka in terms of trade integration, Sri Lanka is one of the first countries in Asia that opened up in 1977. And we integrated in terms of trade with the region and the world at the beginning for several decades, and then we moved back as a result of internal policies and basically, nationalistic protection policy. We moved back from the open small economy into a more protectionist closed economy. That's why we have been suffering. One of the reasons why we are in the crisis. That's inconsistent internal policies and moving back and forth.
From your perspective, how do you see, given the current conjuncture where we are right now, the challenges the monetary policy framework faces, the challenge for institutions, both from a near-term perspective and from a longer-term perspective in anchoring strong and inclusive growth?
This is up to, I think, 2019 data. All the indicators in terms of social indicators, in terms of poverty, in terms of health, education, per capita incomes, living standards, the charts earlier Sri Lanka was kind of outlier, basically better side. But if you look at last 2 years data, you can see this complete turnaround. And it highlights the lack of strong institutions and some of the missteps that basically turn around the decades of good work and move the country back into several decades. Key one is a fiscal imbalances that has been growing several decades and no one basically. So this is one of the reasons why the Sri Lanka's experience, we have gone to the IMF 16 times, this is 17th time. If you look at the earlier IMF program, last 10 programs, and look at the objectives, same objectives, revenue-based fiscal consolidation and high debt and some payment issues. So we have been going back and forth, and the reason why always with the program we go in the 2 steps forward and take again 1 step backwards, so there is no progress. It's mainly because of this important topic of the strong fiscal rules, the independent central bank, independent regulatory institutions, strong public service, independent public service, the politicizing the whole government operations. Those are the reasons. And as long as these were basically in a way that one of the reasons why large fiscal deficit is moving into large debt, and as long as we had access to markets, we continue to go in this direction. The negative in terms of trade openness, we moved backwards, and then we borrowed and lived for long years, and a small mistake and lack of strong institutions that triggered this thing, and we moved back decades back into this thing. I think this is where what is important. It's not only we are learning that strong institutions is the foundation for a sustainable, inclusive, steady growth for long periods without going into a debt crisis.